The billionaire's card was declined at the gas station, and what happened next changed the lives of everyone involved forever. Transaction denied. Try another card, announced the attendant at the Shell station on Route 65, with the tone of someone who had seen this scene 1,000 times before. The man in front of her, dressed in simple clothes but wearing a watch that cost more than most people's annual salary, stood motionless in front of the gas pump. Alexander Mitchell was 42 years old and controlled a technology empire valued at $3,400,000,000. At least he did until 3 weeks ago, when he decided to disappear from the corporate world after discovering something that would change everything. Now, standing at that remote gas station in the Texas countryside, with his card declined and 50 people in line behind him, he felt the weight of their judgmental stares. Seriously? This guy is driving a Mercedes and can't pay $23 for gas. Someone in line muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. A middle-aged woman laughed dismissively. I bet it's just another one of those fake influencers, pretending to be rich for social media. Alexander tried another card. Denied again. The third card was also declined, and now the murmurs turned into open laughter. He knew exactly why this was happening. His cards had been deliberately blocked by someone who had discovered where he was hiding. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the line, said the attendant, clearly embarrassed by the situation. That's when two small voices cut through the tense air like sharp knives. We can pay for him, said two twin girls of about 8 years old in unison, emerging from behind their family's car in line. They were black, wore colorful braids, and held a small pink purse with coins jingling inside. The silence was instantaneous and deafening. Girls, come back here right now, shouted a female voice from inside the car, clearly embarrassed. But the twins, named Grace and Hope, did not back down. Instead, they walked up to Alexander with a determination that contrasted sharply with her age. Grace, the more talkative of the two, held up the small purse. We have $15.60. It's not enough, but, she hesitated, looking at her sister, who nodded encouragingly. Our grandma always said that when someone needs help and he can help, even if it's just a little, he helps. Alexander looked at those two children and felt something break inside his chest. For 3 weeks, he had been treated like an outcast by the business elite who had expelled him from his own empire. Executives who had kissed his feet months ago now refused to return her calls. Investors who had begged for meetings now spread rumors about her mental instability. And there, at that forgotten gas station, two black girls were offering his $15.60 to a white man he didn't even know. The girl's mother finally got out of the car, visibly mortified. I'm sorry, sir. They're too kind for their own good sometimes. Alexander knelt down to the girl's height, his eyes watering in a way they hadn't in decades. What are your names, her? Grace, said the first. Hope, said the second. Hope and Grace, Alexander murmured, more to himself. Do you know you're special, his? The people in line began to shift uncomfortably. Some whispered about the pathetic scene they were witnessing. Others took photos discreetly, already imagining how this story would play out on social media. What none of them knew was that Alexander Mitchell wasn't just a wealthy man who had fallen on hard times. He was someone who had uncovered secrets about corporate corruption that could bring down entire governments. And at that moment, looking at those two brave girls, he made a decision that would change not only his life, but the lives of everyone at that gas station. Because sometimes, when you lose everything you thought mattered, two children show up to show you what really has value in this world. And if you're enjoying this story of how the kindness of two girls sparked one of the most epic revenge stories in American business history, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how the seemingly simple encounter turned into the beginning of a war that made corporate giants tremble with fear. The photo was posted on social media before Alexander even left the gas station parking lot. Bankrupt billionaire needs help from children to pay for gas was emblazoned in large letters above the viral image that showed her kneeling in front of the two black girls. In less than 2 hours, the hashtag billionaire beggar was among the trending topics on Twitter. The comments were merciless. This guy controlled a $3 billion company and can't pay $23? Pathetic to see a privileged white man being saved by two black children. Karma in action. The mask has finally come off. But what really made Alexander's blood boil wasn't the anonymous comments. It was the message he received at 10:43 p.m. from a number he knew by heart. Have you seen the news? It seems that his strategy of disappearing from the map isn't working very well. Maybe it's time to accept that some secrets are too big for one person. J.K. Jonathan Kane, his former partner, best friend for 15 years, and current CEO of Technocore Industries, the company Alexander had founded and from which he had been expelled 3 weeks ago after discovering something that would change the public's perception of technology forever. Alexander stared at his phone screen, remembering the last conversation they had in the office on the 42nd floor in Manhattan. Jonathan was sitting in his Italian leather chair, smiling with that expression expression that Alexander had taken years to realize was pure falseness. Alex, you need to understand that some government contracts are delicate. What has he discovered about our algorithms being used for mass surveillance that can't be leaked? Not now. Not ever. It's profitable in all 50, Jonathan had replied without batting an eye. Now, 3 weeks later, Alexander was sitting on the edge of a cheap motel bed in Texas, watching her reputation being methodically destroyed on social media. Every viral post, every humiliating meme, every sarcastic comment was another nail in Jonathan's plan to ensure that no one would take any accusations Alexander might make seriously. Who would believe a bankrupt billionaire who needed the help of children to pay for gas? His phone vibrated again. Another message from Jonathan. By the way, I just saw that you're staying at the Sunset Motel on Route 65. Charming place. I bet the little girls who helped you today live nearby. It would be a shame if something happened to her family because of you, don't you think? Alexander felt his stomach churn. Jonathan wasn't just destroying his credibility. He was threatening innocent people. Grace and Hope, two children who had shown more compassion in 5 minutes than he had seen in 15 years in the corporate world, were now being targeted by a psychopath. But Jonathan Kane had underestimated one fundamental thing about Alexander Mitchell. In the last 3 months, since discovering Technocore's secret files, Alexander hadn't simply collected evidence of the illegal operation. He had mapped out the entire network of corruption that connected her former company to high-ranking political figures, intelligence agencies, and international corporations. He had names, dates, bank transfers, recordings of secret meetings, and documents that could put 23 powerful people behind bars. Most importantly, he had created a security system that Jonathan didn't even suspect existed. Alexander opened his laptop and typed in a specific sequence of codes. On the screen appeared an interface he had personally programmed, a digital deadman switch connected to all the major news sites in the country. If anything happened to him, or if he failed to enter a security code every 72 hours, all the files would be automatically released to investigative journalists in 7 different countries. But Jonathan had just given him something even more valuable than protection: personal motivation. It was no longer just about justice or doing the right thing. Now it was about protecting Grace and Hope, 2 girls who represented everything that was still pure in this corrupt world. Alexander looked out the motel window, seeing the lights of a small town twinkling in the distance. Somewhere out there, 2 little girls slept peacefully, unaware that they had just become the catalyst for one of the biggest exposés of corporate corruption in American history. He smiled for the first time in 3 weeks. Jonathan Kane thought he was playing chess, but Alexander was about to show him that when you threaten innocent children, the game changes completely. Each new humiliation on social media only strengthened something inside him that his oppressors couldn't see, a quiet determination fueled by the very arrogance he tried to use to destroy him. What that traitorous former partner didn't know was that every threat against innocent people was signing her own sentence of defeat, because some men become dangerous precisely when they have nothing left to lose except the chance to protect those who truly deserve protection. 3 days after Jonathan's veiled threat, Alexander was sitting in a 24-hour cafe on the outskirts of Dallas at 2:15 a.m. The place was practically empty, except for a lone truck driver and a waitress chewing gum as she mechanically cleaned dishes. The woman who walked through the door seemed completely out of place in that environment. Samantha Torres, 38, an investigative journalist for the Washington Herald, had won 2 Pulitzer Prizes for exposing government corruption. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy bun, and she carried a worn backpack that contained recording equipment more sophisticated than most newsrooms in the country. Alexander Mitchell, she said, sliding into the opposite seat. I thought he was dead or stuck in some country without extradition. I thought so too for a while, Alexander replied, pushing a briefcase toward her, until I discovered that some secrets are too big to die with those who know them. Samantha opened the folder, and his eyes widened. Documents, contracts, bank transfers, transcripts of secretly recorded meetings. It was enough material to bring down not only Technocore Industries, but an entire network of corruption that extended all the way to Congress. My God, she whispered, flipping through the pages quickly. This, if it's true, we're talking about systematic violation of the 4th Amendment, election rigging, blackmailing public figures. It's true. Every word, every number, every recording. Alexander picked up his now cold coffee, but his former partner Jonathan Kane is trying to destroy me before I can expose it, and now he's threatening innocent people. As he spoke, Alexander's cell phone vibrated. A notification from Twitter, another humiliating meme about the billionaire beggar, had reached 100,000 shares. This time, someone had created a remix using the audio from the gas station incident, with Grace's voice saying we can pay for him transformed into an electronic beat. Jonathan was being methodically cruel, turning 2 children's kindness into a national joke. I need you to keep this material safe, Alexander said, and start checking everything. It will take time, but when we publish, it has to be irrefutable. Samantha nodded, carefully putting the documents away. How much time do you think we have? Jonathan won't wait long. He knows that every day I spend free is a risk. But he made a fatal mistake. He underestimated what happens when you threaten innocent children. That same morning, Alexander made his second strategic decision. He drove to the elementary school where Grace and Hope studied, a humble red brick building surrounded by a simple but well-kept playground. He didn't approach the girls. That would be inappropriate and potentially dangerous. Instead, he sought out the principal. Dorothy Washington, 55, had been an educator for 3 decades. She recognized him immediately, but her expression didn't show the disdain he had encountered on social media. Mr. Mitchell, I heard about the incident. Grace and Hope told me they helped you. They did more than that, Alexander replied. They reminded him of who he used to be before he lost himself in money and power. I'm here because I believe she may be in danger because of him. The principal tilted her head, concerned. What kind of danger? Alexander chose his words carefully. Powerful people who see me as a threat may try to use anyone close to me as leverage. I want to hire discreet security for the school, upgrade the monitoring system, make sure nothing happens. Mr. Mitchell, we don't have the budget for. I'm not asking for money from the school. I'm offering to pay out of my own pocket. $250,000 for security improvements and an educational fund for every student at this school. Dorothy was silent for a long moment. Why would you do that? Because 2 8-year-old girls showed her more compassion in 5 minutes than she's received from businessmen in 15 years. And because if anything happens to her because of me, he would never forgive himself. Meanwhile, in Manhattan, Jonathan Kane was meeting with his lawyers on the 42nd floor of Technocore Tower. The panoramic view of the city stretched out before her, but Jonathan was focused solely on his laptop screen, tracking the engagement metrics of the humiliating posts about Alexander. The company's stock has risen 3% since we started the demoralization campaign, reported David Chun, director of marketing. The narrative that Alexander has lost his sanity is taking hold. No one will take any accusations he makes seriously. Jonathan smiled with satisfaction. Perfect. What about the other security measures? Marcus Webb, head of corporate security and former CIA agent, consulted her notes. We have complete surveillance on he. We know where she's staying, who she's meeting with, where she's going. If necessary, we can expand the operation to include third parties. Third parties. The families of the children who helped him. Indirect pressure can be more effective than direct confrontation. Jonathan paused, considering the implications. He had built an empire based on calculated, coldly practical decisions. Innocent children were just variables in a complex equation. Do whatever is necessary, he finally said, but keep it clean. Nothing that can be traced back to us. What Jonathan didn't know was that Alexander had anticipated exactly this escalation. Over the past 3 days, he hadn't just been collecting evidence. He had installed tracking viruses in Technocore systems using backdoors he himself had created years ago when the company was still her. Every email Jonathan sent, every meeting recorded by corporate devices, every suspicious bank transfer was being automatically copied to secure servers that Alexander controlled remotely. That night, back at the motel, Alexander received a call from Samantha Torres. Alexander, you need to see this. I just intercepted an internal Technocore communication. They're planning something against the children. Alexander's blood ran cold. What exactly? Nothing violent, but intimidation, subtle harassment of families, artificially created bureaucratic problems, economic pressure. They want to make these people's lives unbearable until you show up to save them, and then they'll document it as evidence that you're using the children to clean up her image. Alexander clenched his fists. Jonathan wasn't just destroying her reputation. He was orchestrating a situation where any attempt to protect Grace and Hope would be twisted into manipulation. There's one more thing, Samantha continued. I've been able to trace some of the accounts that are funding the memes and viral posts about you. It's not just Technocore. There are at least 4 other corporations involved, including 2 subsidiaries of media companies. For 15 years, Alexander had built not only software, but relationships. Engineers he had mentored, journalists who respected his work, ethical hackers who shared his ideals of technological transparency. It was an invisible network of allies that Jonathan didn't even suspect existed. Alexander opened his laptop and began typing code he hadn't used in years. It was time to activate this network and show Jonathan Kane that turning the kindness of children into a weapon had been the biggest strategic mistake of his corporate life. What those executives in their glass offices failed to understand was that some battles transcend business logic. They touch on something primitive and powerful about protecting the innocent. And when you awaken that force in someone who has resources, knowledge, and a secret network of allies willing to fight for justice, the war is no longer about money or power, but about something much more fundamental. The difference between those who protect and those who destroy, between those who build communities and those those who exploit them for profit. The Technocore Industries board meeting was about to begin when everyone's cell phones vibrated simultaneously. Jonathan Kane looked at the screen and felt the blood drain from his face. Explosive revelations. Former Technocore CEO exposes mass surveillance scheme that violates the privacy of 200 million Americans was the headline that dominated not only the Washington Herald, but 15 of the country's largest media outlets. Jonathan, are you seeing this? Marcus Webb, the head of security, bursts through the conference room door with her laptop open. They have everything. Secret contracts, recordings of our meetings, bank transfers, even our internal correspondence from the last 3 months. Jonathan tried to maintain her composure, but her hands trembled as she scrolled through the leaked documents. There was every private conversation he had ever had, every unethical decision he had ever made, every threat he had ever made against Alexander. Worst of all was the audio of his own voice saying, "It would be a shame if something happened to her family because of you, don't you think?" Referring to the 2 girls who had helped Alexander. In less than an hour, the hashtag Technocore Files was trending worldwide. The audio of Jonathan threatening innocent children had been played millions of times, accompanied by angry comments from outraged parents around the world. Samantha Torres appeared live on the news channel, holding a stack of documents. "What you are seeing is not just ordinary corporate corruption. We are talking about a systematic blackmail operation involving high-ranking political figures, manipulation of algorithms to influence elections, and illegal use of personal data for government espionage. But there was no way to clean it up. Alexander had been meticulous. Every document had verifiable metadata. Every recording had digital certification of authenticity. Every bank transfer was tracked across multiple international jurisdictions. By 3:15 p.m., Technocore stock had plummeted 42%. By 4 o'clock, the FBI had issued search and seizure warrants for all of the company's offices. By 5 o'clock, Jonathan Kane was being escorted out of the building he had controlled for 3 years, carrying only a cardboard box with his personal belongings. But Alexander had saved the best for last. That evening, during the national news, Grace and Hope appeared in an exclusive interview with their families. The girl's mother, Diane Washington, a 29-year-old nurse, speaks directly to the camera. "My daughters taught her that kindness knows no color, social class, or bank account. They helped a stranger because it was the right thing to do. The fact that powerful executives threatened our family because of that kindness shows exactly why we need more people like Mr. Mitchell in the world." Hope added, with the strange wisdom of an 8-year-old, "Our teacher says that bad people are only bad because they've forgotten how to be good. Maybe you'll remember now." The interview was viewed by 68 million people in the first 24 hours. Jonathan watched it all from his brother's apartment in New Jersey, where he was hiding from the press. Every word from those girls was like a stab in his conscience, which had been dormant for decades. His phone had stopped ringing. No executives wanted to talk to him anymore. His personal bank account had been frozen by the FBI during the investigation. Her husband had changed the locks and served him with divorce papers through a lawyer. But the real coup de grace came in the form of a text message sent directly to his personal phone at 11:47 p.m. "Jonathan, I hope you learned something today. I didn't destroy you out of revenge. I did it to protect 2 children who showed more humanity in 5 minutes than you have shown in 15 years. The difference between us is simple. I use my power to protect the innocent. You use his to threaten them. Alexander." Attached to the message was a photo, Grace and Hope playing on a school playground, laughing, completely oblivious to the fact that they had triggered one of the biggest exposés of corporate corruption in a decade. Jonathan dropped his phone on the floor, finally realizing that he had fatally underestimated not only Alexander Mitchell, but the transformative power of genuine kindness when protected by someone with the resources and determination to defend it. The man who thought he controlled empires discovered that some battles transcend business logic. They touch on something primitive about protecting those who deserve protection. And when you awaken that force in someone who possesses not only resources but a secret network of allies willing to fight for justice, you discover that true strength comes not from threats or blackmail, but from the ability to transform a moment of shared humiliation into a crusade for human dignity that resonates far beyond any boardroom or bank account. 6 months later, Alexander Mitchell was sitting in a modest office in Austin, Texas, running the Grace and Hope Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and exposing corporate corruption. The view from the window showed not the skyscrapers of Manhattan, but a colorful playground where children of all colors played together. "Mr. Mitchell, we have 43 new cases of corruption reporting this week," reported Sarah Chen, her assistant and former Technocore employee, who had joined the cause after seeing the exposé. "And the documentary about our story premieres on Netflix next month." Alexander smiled, adjusting the framed photo on the desk that showed Grace and Hope holding a Young Citizens of the Year award from the governor of Texas. The 2 girls had become national symbols of courage and compassion. Meanwhile, 1,600 kilometers away, Jonathan Kane sat in a 1-bedroom apartment in Detroit, browsing job offers on freelance websites. No tech company wanted his name associated with their resume. His former executive colleagues avoided him like he was radioactive. The phone rang. It was his lawyer. "Jonathan, I have bad news. The FBI has accepted your plea bargain, but the minimum sentence is still 12 years in federal prison, and her ex-wife is seeking retroactive alimony." Jonathan hung up and looked out the apartment's dirty window. On television, there was a commercial for the new documentary series Little Heroes, Big Changes, starring Grace and Hope, who now had their own show teaching children about kindness and social justice. What hurt the most was not the impending prison sentence or bankruptcy. It was knowing that two 8-year-old girls had shown more integrity in 5 minutes than he had in his entire executive career. That same day, Alexander visited Grace and Hope's school for the inauguration of a new digital library funded by the foundation. The girls ran to hug him, still shy from all the national attention they had received. "Mr. Alexander," said Grace, "our teacher said you helped other children like us all over the country." "No," Alexander replied, kneeling down to her height. "You two started all this. I just amplified the kindness you showed him." Hope held her hand. "We still have that $15.60 saved up, in case someone needs it again." Alexander laughed, his eyes watering. "Keep it safe. You taught me that the most powerful gestures come from the purest hearts." The Grace and Hope Foundation processed more than 200 reports of corporate corruption in its first year, resulting in billions of dollars in fines and dozens of arrests of corrupt executives. Alexander discovered that his true wealth was not in bank accounts, but in the ability to turn moments of humiliation into movements of justice. Jonathan Kane was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. During the trial, when asked if he had anything to say, he looked directly into the camera. "Two children taught her about morality better than any business school. I hope that someday I will be worthy of her forgiveness." Alexander's story proves that when you lose everything you thought mattered, sometimes the universe sends two 8-year-old angels to show you what really has value. The best revenge is not to destroy those who have hurt him. It is to build something so powerful and positive that her injustices become irrelevant in the face of the good he is able to create. Because in the end, Jonathan tried to humiliate Alexander, but ended up elevating him to a greater purpose. And if this story of how childhood kindness sparked a revolution of justice touched his heart, subscribe to the channel to discover more stories that prove that small gestures can bring about big changes, and that sometimes the greatest heroes are only 8 years old and have $15 in their pockets.